Hey, welcome everybody. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to be a part of our Producers Engage webinar event. If you're here, if you're an independent producer working in the retirement age market, looking for strategies and ideas and opportunities to expand your reach to help grow your annuity sales production, well, then you come to the right place. We are here. That's our number one goal here at the Win Group is to talk about ways to do that. And we're going to be having a special focus today, specifically on the Gen X group of the next wealth transfer that's going to be happening here over the next 15, 20 years. And we're excited to have this conversation with one of our partners in the industry, Global Antic. You may have heard of this name. I'm sure one of the biggest producers and entities out there in the FIA space for over a decade now. And but we're going to be talking about this segment, this audience, and why this should matter for you. We've been talking about baby boomers for decades, right? But how about what's the next transfer wealth happening? That's going to be around the Gen X group, and we're going to have Global Atlantic join that conversation. Stay till the end, though, because part two of this is taking action and how you can take advantage of an AI website analysis tool exclusively through the Global Atlantic, our Global Atlantic partners, and how you can gain access to this at no cost, including getting access to a replay that we just did yesterday covering their full suite of FIA products. One of them, an accumulation product with a legacy benefit that pays lump sum. So stay till the end to learn more about how you can get access to that. My name is Phil Diazon. I'm the founder and president of the Win Group here based out of Seattle, Washington. We work in all 50 states. Our mission, again, is to help you elevate your production, get you to the next level. And we do that through our team. My other colleagues here, Brett Riley, Ricky Villa, our senior consultants, also annuity success coaches, are going to be standing by towards the end, also standing by to take your phone calls to learn more about how you can take advantage of the study they're going to learn more about today and how you can obviously gain access to that AI analysis tool as well. And of course, a big part of our success is our Retirement Show 360 system. Many of you have seen and heard about this. This has been our flagship program to help ignite all parts of your business, whether it's content, whether it's credibility, whether it's making connections and expanding your reach with lead generation or coaching. This has been our flagship program to help agents at all levels, whether you're beginning or doing a million or going to 5 million, trying to get to 10 million. This is a big part of our success that hundreds of agents are a part of. Members, doesn't cost a dime to be a part of this. Learn more about how you gain access to this system at no cost by reaching out to us at the end. We also will have a Q&A that you'll opportunity at the bottom of your screen. You should see a Q&A box. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, we will do what we can to address your questions, probably towards the end if possible, and potentially throughout the presentation as we go through this. But with that being said, again, thanks for being here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kevin Bowden. He's the director of wholesale operations with Global Atlantic to introduce our speaker for today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Phil. We're excited to be here from Global Atlantic. We're not going to talk any product today. We're going to spare you that. If you have questions, please reach out to the Win Group. They're very well versed in what we have to offer. We do have some good stuff for you. But the point of today, and Phil nailed it. I got into this business in 2005, and we were talking about 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. That was the opportunity set. I felt like I've been talking about that my entire career. The reality is we're within 3 years of that last baby boomer actually retiring. So now is the time for us to focus our business on what the next opportunity is. And that is what my partner, Kirk Bowman, is going to be talking about today. He's from our consulting group. He travels all around the country, all 50 states, doing workshops, practice management, and just offering value content to the FP community. So I'm going to cut my stuff short. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. Kirk, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Right, Kevin, I appreciate you giving me that introduction. And Phil, thanks for having me on today. Always good to join up with the Win Group. I'm going to share my screen here. And just everyone let me know that you can see that on yours. Okay, here we go. Slideshow, let's get started.
And Kirk, as that's pulling up, obviously a big part of our reach, again, I mentioned it earlier, but Global Atlantic has been around for a while. They've been doing a lot of work in the FA space, as Kevin had mentioned earlier. We are, like I said, working in all 50 states. So regardless of what states you're in, we definitely want to hear from you and figure out how we can partner up as we go through the study. But yeah, Kirk, go ahead.
All right, you see that okay? Screen looks good?
Looks good.
All right, great. Thanks again, Phil. So again, my name's Kirk Bowman. I'm with the consulting group at Global Atlantic. What we are is a research team. We go out and research clients. We want to understand them financially, socially, and emotionally. We bring that information back to the advisors with the hope that you'll retain clients within your practice and help add new ones to your practice as well. Obviously, trying to help you grow. This presentation today is a lot about time, and you can see the title there ahead of time. This is my favorite time of year. Little personal note: we're about to start the football season. I've got a son that's going to be playing in his first college football game on Saturday for the USC Trojans, and I played college football as well. And through that experience, I met a lot of great coaches. My first college coach was this kind of grumpy old man. His name was Earl Bruce. He had previously been the head coach at Ohio State University. And, I met him when I was 18 years old. And at the time, I had never heard the saying that he had shared with us that really had a big impact on my life. And the saying goes, and Coach Bruce used to say this all the time, that early is on time is late, and late is forgotten. And again, at 18, I'd never heard that, and that meant a lot to me. And so today is about being ahead of time, right? Where time matters. And we'll start with another story here. We got to go back to the 1800s, 1848 to be specific. And we start in Sutter's Mill, California. Now you see this picture on your screen, this person standing in front of this log building, and you wonder what they're doing here, because we don't talk a lot about the 48ers, right? History doesn't remember these folks, but they're an important group. Okay, these 48ers, they were the ones that were ahead of the curve and got to Northern California and participated in, at the time, one of the largest wealth transfers in the history of the country. Now, the wealth transfer we're talking about here was the gold rush. But everyone knows when we talk about the gold rush in the California foothills, who do we remember? Another football tie-in here. There's a team in San Francisco. Phil, probably not your favorite team. But they're known as the 49ers, right? And so the 48ers are important because they were ahead of time. Their wealth transfer that they participated in was literally picking up the gold off the banks of these streams and rivers and putting it in their pocket. But history doesn't remember them. They remember the 49ers. Now, the 49ers came along, and obviously a lot of people participated in this. But the difference was, for the 49ers, it was a much more competitive landscape. It was much more expensive to operate in this space. The scale of the mining operations obviously exploded relative to what the 48ers went through. And so what we're trying to message to you here is that you want to be ahead of the curve with this latest gold rush. Be ahead because you can prosper in these early years, just like the 48ers did. And when we look at them in a group, these people weren't career prospectors. They were people that were adaptive thinkers. They recognized an opportunity and took advantage of it. They weren't lucky. They didn't just stumble upon it. They were intentional with their actions. They knew that this was a huge opportunity that they were on the precipice of. And then finally, they weren't just ahead. They weren't just in time. They were ahead of time. And so a really interesting group with the 48ers. We hop back in the time machine, come back now to the modern era. The next gold rush, the next massive wealth transfer that's going to take place in the United States is the transfer of wealth from the baby boomers to Generation X. So when we look at the numbers here, they're quite staggering. Overall, it's going to be an $84 trillion transfer of wealth. And Gen X is going to participate in about $30 trillion of this wealth transfer. I went to a state school, so I'm not a mathematician. But when you do the cowboy math on this, it comes out to about $104 million opportunity for every financial advisor in the United States of America. So truly, what could be a career-defining or life-changing opportunity that is not going to be too much further in the future. So we look at the timeline. Here we are. Obviously, we're in 2026 now, and there's a couple of dynamics that are happening out there demographically in the marketplace. The baby boomers, like Phil talked about beforehand, and Kevin did as well. We've worked with baby boomers throughout our careers in financial services, but they're starting to get into retirement, and some of them are passing on, and their wealth is transferring. And so Gen X is projected to have more wealth than the baby boomers, not in the far-fetched future, This is going to happen in the next few years. So in our research, what we found is sometime in 2031 or 2032, that Gen X wealth will exceed baby boomer wealth for the first time. So this is no longer something that's out there in the ether that's not happening. We know this is going to happen in the next 5 to 6 years. And we want to give you this information today so that you're positioned within your practice to take advantage of this opportunity. So when we move into the future now, we wanted you to know that this was not research that was our opinion or that was conjecture. This was the research we did. We did a broad analysis of the Gen X generation, right? We wanted to understand what made them click, what makes them different, how they make decisions, how they approach their relationships with their financial advisors. We did in-depth interviews with financial professionals, with groups and practices and individuals that are already having success attracting these Gen X investors, right? So we went to them and wanted to see what they were doing. And then we did a proprietary survey of 400 investors. So these were people's age 58 to 75. They had an average investable amount of assets of $500,000. And so these are folks that perhaps you're working with already in your practice. Now, we've got three things that we want to accomplish in our time today. We really want to understand Gen X, and again, the critical factors that make them different than the baby boomers, how they make decisions. We want to activate into what we found and what we call a mega trend. We identified something with Gen X that makes them really different than the preceding generations, the baby boomers. So we're going to talk to you about how to activate into that mega trend. And then finally, at the end today, we'll give you a tool that will help position you to make sure that your practice in your website is more Gen X ready. And so as we start today and understand the baby boomers, we go back and we look at, what is the definition of a Gen Xer? So Gen X was born in the United States between 1965 and 1980. There are about 65 million Gen Xers out there. And just like preceding generations, they're different. And what we found is it's these events that happen socially, economically, culturally in their formative years that really influences them to be different than those preceding generations. And so if we go all the way back into the early 1980s, these are significant things that are happening in society. You had the introduction of the personal computer. Certainly that changed the way we communicate, we do business. This really changes our lives to a daily basis. Early in the 80s, you also had the advent of mass media. I have 3 college-age kids. They cannot believe that when I was a child, there were 3 channels on the television, right? They've never lived in that world. And so in the 80s, we had the introduction of cable television, satellite television, and really 24-hour-a-day news networks. There were other things going on culturally. In the early 80s, you had the divorce rate that peaked. It was the first time in American society that dual income households exceeded 50%. So more dual income families than were not. And largely because of these 2 other factors, you had this phenomenon in the early 80s called latchkey kids. Now, some of you may not know what that is. I lived this life. Essentially, my parents were working and my sister and I took care of ourselves. And you'll see how that factors into influencing Generation X. 1981, staying in the early 80s, MTV comes out. That was a big, big deal that had a lot of cultural influence. You had these great 80s movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and The Breakfast Club. If you haven't seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I'd recommend seeing it. It's amazing to think what that movie would look like if it was redone today, right? If you haven't seen it, it's about a bunch of high school age kids that are let loose in the city of Chicago, no cell phones, no Life 360 tracking them, and it's their misadventures. And certainly that's a different world than we'd see now. Early 1990s, you had the situation in Los Angeles and across the country with the Rodney King arrest and the riots. Al Gore invents the internet in early the 1990s, 1993. That's a bit of a running joke. You probably have to be a Gen Xer to understand Al Gore claiming that he invented the internet. Maybe you remember this one, but the O.J. Simpson trial and verdict and all of the drama surrounding that in the mid-90s. We had the Monica Lewinsky situation with President Clinton in the late 90s. and then some things that are probably more familiar to how we live today or how we interact or communicate. But really, the inception of social media with the Yahoo networks and Napster. Enron collapse in 2001 was a huge cultural event to me. At that time, I'm out of college and I'm starting to pay attention to the business world. And that level of deception and corruption was really impactful for someone like me that works in this space. You had the Catholic Church scandal in the early 2000s. MySpace comes online in 2003. Obviously, the advent of social media, and we all know the impact that that's had on us even today. Facebook comes out, still going, 20 some odd years later. And when you look at these cultural, social events, they seem sort of random. But what we did in our research is start to look back and say, no, these kind of fell into these three groups that really influences how Gen X thinks, how they operate. And so what we found was Gen X is a really unique generation, right? We are a generation that straddles the analog age and the digital age. So, Phil, I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but I'm 52 years old. I was born in 1973, so right smack dab in the middle of between 65 and 80. And I remember life, what it was like before we were fully digital. And so these Gen Xers are really connected. And I think it has a lot to do with perspective of remembering those analog days, but living now in the digital world. Okay.
Kirk, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I also felt like my life was flashing before my eyes as you were going through this timeline here. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do relate to most of everything that we just went through here. So I definitely feel that understanding what it meant to go from that analog age to the digital age. It was a totally different perception, a totally different feeling of how you saw the world, right? And
Yeah.
that's sort of, that's what you're talking about is that perspective, that unique perspective that this new generation has, or the next
All right. So,
generation.
Phil, I'm pegging you as a Gen Xer, right? So, I mean, you can relate. And I wish I could see everybody. I always have people raise their hands to give me an idea of how much of the audience is from this generation. It's a really unique space because we remember the old ways, but we live in the new ways. Now, this middle third here, a lot of things happening in society. It could be in mass media. It could be, legally, socially, in the business world. And when you look at these events, there's a commonality there and a common outcome. And what we see with Gen Xers are that they're really skeptical of institutions, right? I even look back just a few years ago with what was going on with COVID. Uh, Independent of what side you're on, it raised a lot of skepticism, right? Just not sure we can trust these large institutions the way that baby boomers did. Okay. And then finally, these things that happen in our culture, and again with movies and families, what we found with Gen Xers are they're very resourceful, right? This is sort of that outcome of being one of those latchkey kids. It's a generation of people that can take care of themselves, don't necessarily rely on others. And that has an impact on the way you'll do business. And so we've seen this impact really magnified across, different silos of professions. Okay, financial advisors, it's certainly a different world than it was 40 years ago. Lawyers, agents, doctors, realtors. The real life example that always kind of hits me square between the eyes is that of a realtor. I don't know about you guys. My wife and I moved a couple of years ago, and the realtor was the last person that we called. We were able to do all of our research online. We were able to understand comps in the market and pricing in the market. And truthfully, we didn't really want to call a realtor. But that's just kind of the way we've always done it. And certainly the relationship has changed across these industries as it has with us, people in the financial services world. And so we wanted to look at the rules of engagement, really the flow of conversations, the flow of how information is distributed. For baby boomers, it was pretty literal, right? It was, I have a financial advisor, a financial professional. I ask them to do something, they do it for me, or they ask me to do something and I do it for them. So this very linear relationship, flow of information, workflow. And what we found with Generation X it's much different. Okay. It's not this linear process anymore. There's a lot more people at the table. And so we wanted to dive in this from a research standpoint to really understand the differences between these two generations. And so here's some of the results from our research. We asked the question of those 400 investors. We said, when you're making investment decisions, what source do you rely on the most? And the answer being, the most common answer was my financial professional. Well, 95% of baby boomers said, when I'm making those decisions, this is who I rely on, right? That linear relationship. It goes both ways, but it's very linear. Well, 95% of baby boomers say, I rely on my financial pro, but only 53% of Gen Xers rely solely on their financial professional. So again, more people at the table. We also wanted to know with baby boomers and Gen Xers, we asked the question, which best describes your process for making investment decisions? The answer being, I make most of the decisions with input and support from others. You can see baby boomers, only 30% said, I rely on some of the information coming from other places. Remember that sort of one-on-one linear relationship with their financial professional, where nearly double the Gen Xers, nearly 60% said, well, I make most of these decisions, but there's other people involved in this decision-making process, right? Skeptical of institutions, digitally savvy, digitally connected. We know that information's out there. And so it's some interesting information. Naturally, this led us down deeper into the rabbit hole of who else then is at the table? Who else is influencing these decisions? And you really don't have to go far to look around and understand who else is helping Gen Xers make these financial decisions. No question that the importance that technology and the online presence plays in the decision making process, right? If we go back to the 80s, this information wasn't widely available. Now it's at everyone's fingertips, and we haven't even talked about AI. I know AI is a daily subject on many webinars and many offices, many phone calls. What's amazing to me is just the daily applications of AI and how that's changed for me in just the last couple of years. I don't know about you, I hardly use Google anymore. Everything is run through one of these large language models like ChatGPT. So we don't know the impact that AI is going to have on the decision-making process or our relationships with clients and prospects. Other people that are at the table. You saw CNN when they went online, or I guess on the air at the time in the early 1980s. Well, now what do we have? 4 or 5 24/7, 365-day a year financial networks. A lot of times at my house, I just have a financial network up there that just runs in the background. And so this information is always pouring in. Podcasts, these did not exist in the early 1980s. I guess the closest equivalent would have been like AM radio, where you could tune into a sports station or a weather station. I don't remember my parents ever listening to a financial news station. I don't believe something like that existed. But now we have unlimited number of podcasts, unlimited amount of information that's very specific to perhaps a question we have about a financial decision. On these long format podcasters, I mean, they take deep dives. And so this is having an impact on Generation X folks and how they make their decisions. And then the very firms that you may work for certainly play a part in this. A lot of that information that the firms had used to be gate kept, right? They did not let that information out. That was not public information. And now, largely because of the internet, we can go on any different firm and look at their forecasts, update, understand what's going on in the markets. And so the firms, again, that we may work for have a part of this. And then think about this. This is exponentially magnified across everybody that you know. We all consume information from these different sources, and we typically all have an opinion. And friends and colleagues might come to you when you're making a decision to get your opinion of it. So you can't discount, the guy here, your buddy down the street that's having you for a barbecue. He's got an opinion on financial issues, right? Where you should be headed. And so there's a lot of people at the table now. Now, what we found through this research is that this really is a community. All of those different sources create this community, okay? A circle of peers and pros, professionals that are united in a purpose, and they're sharing their practical ideas for smarter decisions. Okay. And so you hear the term community thrown around a lot, but this really is the big finding from our research, is that Gen Xers have a disproportionate reliance on their community, whether it's from a podcast or from a website or something they saw on CNBC. We have a disproportionate reliance on all of this other information when we're going to make decisions. Now, we're going to talk a lot about, in the short time we have, about this community effect. Part of our research, we went out and worked with different financial professionals and their firms to understand, or let me take a step back. We went out and found different firms and practices that are already understanding this community effect, right? That this community idea really has an impact on their business. Now, I'm not going to read all of these, but the very bottom quote came specifically from a top Forbes advisor that we worked with and we got to visit with. And he had an annual summer picnic. And what he started to notice was that each year he conducted his picnic, there were certain groups of people that would gravitate towards each other, and they would sit with each other at this picnic. You can read the quote here. We noticed certain clients gravitating towards each other at our big annual summer picnic. Based on that observation, we started hosting events and building communities in our practices around clients with common and shared interests. It's been a very rewarding exercise. That is the community effect. It's happening in your practice now. If you're hosting people, if you're getting together, and you might not see it, but it's happening. People gravitate towards each other that have these common and shared interests. So that's the community effect. Those Gen Xers are in communities, and they're relying on that community when they're making decisions. And so when we talk about this community model for financial professionals, of course, we wanted to know, why should you care? How does it work? And what makes these communities successful? We wanted to have a better understanding of this, okay? Why should you care about this community effect? If you're going to access Gen Xers, right, you really have to understand these new rules of engagement. Again, that they really have a disproportionate reliance on their community when they're making decisions about financial issues. Okay, so this is happening. It's not something that you necessarily have to build. It can happen organically, right? What we found was the people that are already having success in these communities were just facilitating conversations, right? So they can create these small groups of Gen Xers. It can be on their own website. It can be in person. It can be on social media if your firms allow it. But the first step is to identify the community and then to facilitate these conversations, okay? Meeting regularly and encouraging member referrals, which sounds something like this. Hey, if you're a part of a community, let's say it's about retirement. We'll just keep it very vague and broad. If there's anybody else that that you think could benefit from this information, invite them in, right? This is a community that's very inclusive. Finally, the last part is what makes these communities successful and therefore makes the financial professionals successful. It's really sort of holistic and humanistic. I think this is a good thing. It's not about increasing commissions. It's about being on a mission to identify the communities and help facilitate people getting together. It's about quality conversations, not quantity. We're not saying you need to add, thousands of people to your communities. It's really identifying the ones you have and facilitating these conversations, right? Inclusivity, not exclusivity. What we're talking about here is that if there's anybody out there that can benefit from these conversations, invite them in. All right. We don't need to be exclusive based on AUM. They may become your client, they may not. But we did find is if they are part of the community, that community is going to have a big impact on them and can lead you to your door. And so again, we go back to our timeline and it really begs this question, right? Is your business built for the way that it works now? Is it rooted in the present? Or is your business built for the future? Right? So is it a business that's going to attract and serve Gen Xers? Because that X marks the spot moment that we've thought of sort of historically, like being out there years away, is not. Remember, it's only about 5 years away before Gen X starts to take over. So again, we've talked a lot about this community effect. The feedback I've gotten on this presentation is, Kirk, this sounds like a big chore. Okay, like I have to totally rework my practice, and that's not. It really is about identifying and facilitating to help you activate into this mega trend. All right. And so if you're sitting there on this call and you're thinking, okay, well, I have some Gen X clients that I work with, and there's certainly some Gen X prospects that identified. How do I get to them? So really, there's two ways, right? You're going to access those Gen X prospects through the Gen X clients that you have. That's going to work. That's great. That's really that community, right? Knowing that Gen X relies on the opinion of others. And then the other way, and perhaps maybe the old-fashioned way, is going, well, I'll get to these Gen X prospects through my current baby boomer clients, right? These parents. Now, there's a statistic that's out there that it's a big number. And unfortunately, it can be a little daunting. And so that stat, and I know many of you have probably seen that, but it's 70% of Gen Xers don't use their parents' financial professional. Okay. What we found in our research is that you can't confuse don't with won't. It's just that understanding that the Gen Xers go about their business differently than the baby boomers. All right. And so you really have to have a better understanding of Gen X and how you're going to access them. And so back to our research, we asked the question of the Gen Xers. We said, would you consider joining a community hosted by your parents' financial professional, featuring focus group discussions designed to help navigate a life stage challenge relevant to you? Okay. 54% of those Gen Xers that responded said, yeah, I would meet with my parents' financial professional if there's a community that they're hosting that is relevant to my situation. So 54% said yes. 30% said they're uncertain. I submit to you that this 30% is, easily converted. And so when I look at these numbers, I say, well, that's 84% of Gen Xers say, yeah, I would use my professional or my financial professional of my parents if they activated in this community effect. And only 16% said, no, that's not very likely. Well, now unlikely or not very likely is not a no. So it's a pretty substantial number of those Gen Xers that say they'd be interested in this. And so the next part of this research and our discussion today was, well, we've talked about communities. Kirk, what are you talking about? What kind of communities would Gen X investors be willing to join? Okay, and it's really simple stuff. And that's why we say you just have to identify and facilitate it. The biggest amount of Gen Xers, the largest percentage, 59% said, yeah, I'd be willing to join a community where the subject is about retirement lifestyle and locations, right? Think of the impact that technology has had on all of our lives. I live this life. I travel for a living. I work through my computer. I would love to be a part of a community of people that talked about lifestyle and where's a great place to live. And so that was pretty profound number. 51% said I'd be interested in a community about health and wellness and aging, right? These are topics that interest Gen Xers. 28% said they would be interested in a community that was about caring for their aging parents. This is practically describing me personally. I'm going through this right now with my father. I'd love to hear what other people have to say and think about this issue. I've got 3 kids in college, and 23% of Gen Xers said, yeah, I'd like to join a community on the subject of college-bound children or children that are in college. And then 19% of them said, yeah, I'd be interested in a community where we discuss career transitions and job searches. And so these were the top 5 communities that I would say for you that you need to have an eye out for and understand what they're discussing and where some of these clients would gravitate towards for that type of conversation. So you might be sitting there going, look, I'm good. I have this great, pipeline into these Gen X prospects and clients. And so we want to do a little reflection exercise where you can kind of check yourself, right? So you can ask yourself these questions. What do I know about each child? So we're talking about the child of a child of a baby boomer client that you have. What do I know about their children's life stages, their career, and their family situation, right? So this is a rhetorical question to you to ask yourself. to kind of test to where you are with this pipeline. How often do I interact or communicate with those Gen X prospects? Do I communicate with them directly or indirectly? What is my understanding of those Gen X prospects, maybe the children of your baby boomer clients? What do I understand about their mindset and their financial goals? And how connected am I really to their parents in terms of, the financial and emotional space, right? So ask yourself those questions and maybe give you an idea of how far down the road are you on this. We aim to make these practical and achievable, and something that when you leave this webinar, you can implement into your practice that makes it better. And so I'm going to give you one simple action idea, one simple action item that you can start doing in the next couple of days. If you wait 90 days, go ahead. I'd say start this immediately. This came from one of those advisors that we identified that had really positioned their practice well to attract and retain Gen X clients. Any meeting that they would have, this advisor would create a family tree. Okay. Now, the family tree was not for a matter of record, right? They had all of this information in their client profiles, but they would create this family tree and put it in front of that prospect or client as a way to stay connected. Okay. So again, not for the record, but it's a connection to understand what's going on with these succeeding generations. The father and the mother are your clients. I want to know what's going on with their three kids, their two daughters and their son, their in-laws, and perhaps the grandchildren, because you'll never, well, I shouldn't say that. You always want to know if some sort of family dynamic is changing and you have someone like Cousin Eddie popping up. Now, if you're not a Gen Xer, you may not get that reference. It's a 80s movie, Christmas Vacation, Cousin Eddie. But this is a way to stay connected to these other generations and make sure we don't have that Cousin Eddie popping up that's going to mess things up. And so that's a really simple, practical idea that you can use. Now, lastly today, talking about positioning. Okay, this is a way to ensure or to, if you're not, to make sure that you can position your practice to attract Gen Xers. Make sure you're Gen X ready. What Gen X is most concerned with are people, presence, and practice, right? And what we're talking about here is the number one way that they're going to access you if they don't know you personally. And even if they do know you personally, they're going to go through your website, right? Remember, this is a really digitally connected generation. When they go to their website, they're looking for these three things: people, practice, presence. They want to know who you are, right? And how you connect with people. They want to know how you show up online, and they want to know what you offer and how you work. And so what we did is create this 45-point checklist where you can look at your website and look at these, compare it to these 45 points on this checklist and see, does my website appeal to Generation X? And we start here again because this is the number one way that Gen Xers are going to access you. So here's the checklist. There's 12 checkpoints on this idea of people, of who you are and how you connect. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. What we found in our research was Gen Xers, they want to see a broker check link. That's sort of the basics. That's blocking and tackling. You have to have a broker check link for Gen Xers, because they're going to check you out, right? They're going to use that link to go and look at what's going on with you personally or what's going on with your practice. I love this one. They want real team photos. I go on a lot of advisors' websites and I see these beautiful stock photos of mountainscapes and oceans and people sitting there over their computer contemplating something with this really silly, really serious look. What they want is to see you, right? They want to see who they're going to be working with. And they want to see testimonials. Now, I fully understand that there can be some limitations based on a firm you may work for, on what you have on your website. But we do a lot of research, and one of the most profound things, and it's a theme that runs through all of our research, is the power of third-party validation, right? And so this is a psychological term or a psychological feeling where, and you guys probably know this, I certainly do, I can tell someone how great I am, right? I can tell them over and over again how great I am. That doesn't mean as much as if someone else tells them how great I am, right? So this theme runs throughout a lot of our research. So Gen Xers want to see testimonials. They don't want to hear it from you. They want to hear from people that you work with of what a great job you do for them. So when it comes to presence, how you show up online, again, here's the checklist, 15 or so different items that you can manually go through and check on your own website. We're only going to focus on 3 today. It was very obvious in our research, and again, this digitally connected generation, they want to be able to schedule online. They don't necessarily want to make a phone call. They want to be able to go online, pick their appointment, schedule their appointment. One of the other sort of side cart things that we realized in our research here was that they also love click to dial. Okay. And again, it's a small thing, but that identified quite a few times in our research where they said, yeah, I don't necessarily want to have to pick up my phone and transpose that phone number. I just want to be able to click it on my iPad or laptop and go right to the source. Okay. They want a secure client portal, right? Think about this. This generation is skeptical of institutions. We're all bombarded daily with spam emails and scams, those types of things. So they want a secure client portal. And then they want to share, right? The power of social media. They want to be able to share their experiences with their community, with their network, the experience that they have with you and your website. So they want social sharing buttons on your website. And then finally, when it comes to your practice, what you offer and how you work, again, you can see the checklist. We're just going to focus on a few of these today. And I think this really, sort of brings home the point that we live in a different time, right? Business has changed, people have changed, families have changed. Gen X said, we want to see services that are relevant to our experience, these midlife relevant services. Things, and again, this ties into those community themes, right? We want to see that you know how to help us care for aging parents, how to launch our kids. Health and wellness is a huge issue with Gen X. Business planning, succession planning, those types of things. They wanted to see modern family services, right? Families today are not necessarily the same as they were 40 years ago. So they want to see from your practice, at least that you're thinking about these ideas of, of working with blended families, working with single parents, this dual caregiver planning. This is that sandwich generation that Gen Xers are, where we have children that we have to care for, but in a lot of circumstances, we're caring for our parents as well. Co-parenting, right? Perhaps you have situations divorced. And, these conversations around the big picture of family assets and family money. And then finally, they wanted to be able to see your offering of educational resources. Now, this sounds like a lot, right? 45-point checklist that you can manually go through and check. And so this is where we got the idea that, you know what? We're a digitally savvy company full of Gen Xers. We want to be able to help facilitate this to you using some of the latest information, some of the latest technology. And so we created what we call the Gen X-Ray. So the Gen X-Ray is an AI service where you'll send Phil your URL and he will feed it to Global Atlantic. We have people here that run this diagnostic review. They will compare your website through this AI filter to that 45-point checklist and give you feedback on how your website looks relative to attracting Gen X clients and prospects. So it's kind of like a Yelp review for your website. We'll rank your website against peers, geographically, people in sort of the same space that you operate in. And we give you this idea, or we give this Yelp review that comes back to you and says, hey, this is what you're doing well. This is what's working. And here are areas where you have an opportunity to improve. And so again, if you're interested in this process, this service, it's available for free to you. Again, you will send Phil your an email that says, hey, I'm interested in this. And then we go from there and run this Gen X report. Okay, so as we begin to wrap up, this is a new thing, right? We are bombarded with QR codes. Or QR codes. I'm not going to be any different. If you like this type of information and you think it can help you in your practice on a day-to-day basis, You hover your phone camera over the QR code, and we ask you to take a short survey. Give us feedback on this survey. There's an opportunity to give us ideas on topics that you're interested in. This is somewhat of an interactive experience. You'll need to know the name of this presentation. It's called Ahead of Time, and you'll need to know my name. It's Kirk Bowman. But we will and always appreciate your feedback. It really does help us shape what type of content and research that we do. So, Phil, we're right on the nose here, maybe a minute late. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I think we've got some time here at the end of the call if anybody has any questions or comments. So, Phil, maybe you facilitate that. I'm going to go ahead, or it looks like you're unsharing my screen for me. So thank you to save me the pain of doing that.
I got you, Kirk. No,
So
I
we,
want to
we
say
should be
thank
back
you.
on. Yep.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. I mean, today's event, if anything, I think this is I think one of the most important topics that is not discussed enough. And I think if you're here, consider yourself privileged and blessed to be a part of really getting ahead of the curve when it comes to that next transfer of wealth. But not just that, the tool that you just went over, that Gen X X-ray, being able to utilize that to review your website, are you up to par for that next generation of wealth that's going to be transferred through the clients you're already working with now, right? I love the community aspect. I think that's so important. My generation, the future generation, they're looking for more attachments around others that are just like them. They don't want to feel like they're making these type of decisions and they're the only ones making it. They want to know there are other people like them within the same circles or same peer groups that are doing the same thing. They're looking for a lot of validation, I feel like. And that's sort of like that in-between curve of what we've seen being the analog age to the digital age. I think that's a big part of that. But man, kudos to you, Kirk. Thanks for taking that time. Questions from our audience. Brett, Ricky, I know you've been facilitating a few questions potentially here and there, but any immediate feedback based on what you just heard?
It does look like we want to get that QR code back up on the screen if we can.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody had the chance to scan that, so that
Sure.
would be lovely. Other than that, this has been educational for me. So I just thank you, Kirk, because I learned a lot, and I see the opportunity here as huge for these next few years as this transfer of wealth happens, as we kind of see the shipping out of the baby boomers and the shipping in of the Gen X, that this is where we're headed in this business. So if you want to be on the forefront of what's next, just seen it. So I'm really excited about this, and I couldn't thank Global Atlantic enough. This was fantastic.
Yeah, and I think a big part of what we want to do is give you guys be the bridge to get you connected to access this Gen X tool, right? And as I mentioned earlier, ways to learn more about Global Atlantic's product line. Global Atlantic obviously is one of the pioneers, I believe, in the FIA world. But one of the products that we covered yesterday specifically addresses that transfer of wealth that we're talking about, that the baby boom generation is one needs to know outside of income, and that's having guaranteed wealth transfer through a benefit that guarantees a certain return or a yield that can be paid lump sum. And we're talking about up to a 250% guarantee on that benefit account for legacy planning, paid lump sum to the beneficiaries. And we're talking about that lump sum transfer to who? The Gen X generation that we're just talking about today. So if you want to learn more about getting access to the replay that we did just yesterday with Global Atlantic, reach out to us. I posted our phone number there. Also at producersenGage.com is actually, we're going to be having today's event available for replay. I'm going to actually stop sharing there real quick so I can share my screen so you can see more details about that. But yeah, we want to be standing by, taking your phone calls, 888-908-0447. Also, a little highlight and preview of our Retirement Show 360 system. Kirk, you mentioned it earlier. How do we help today's agents fill in that gap, right? I like to call it a bridge between that baby boom generation and Gen X, but also just today's clients as well. What are they looking for? And one of the things that we address with the Retirement Show 360 system are what we call the 4 C's of success for building an annuity practice: credibility, content, connections, and community. You said it, community, right? Even as an advisor, as an agent in the field, You may be an independent producer, but it doesn't mean you have to be alone, right? At the end of the day, it's all about, iron sharpens iron, and we do that through the system, credibility, through whether it's podcasts, websites, whether it's through press releases or even a book. We talk about content. We actually have a PowerPoint presentation that's turnkey, built around Social Security, income, taxes, long-term care, even estate planning. But this one I really like a lot. This is a big reason why many of you are on this call. Many of you have built a life practice, a Medicare practice, an AUM practice, and you're looking for ways to penetrate that book of business to uncover annuity assets. Well, we've built playbooks directly at addressing the very thing that Kirk mentioned, how to build community through the tools that we have to offer. We teach you how to do that exactly step by step through our playbooks. And so to learn more about how to gain access to these playbooks, make sure to reach out to us. Go to producersengage.com, fill out our form, book an appointment on the calendar. We want to be there right beside you to every step of the way of the process to take advantage of all these tools. But yeah, anything else to add, Ricky? Brett?
Yeah, I wanted to mention, our agents that we're working with are constantly positioning themselves as educators and teaching people how to be more proactive in their planning, right? And not reactive, not waiting until the market crashes and then, oh, what do I do now? Now I need to make changes quickly, and you've already ran out of time. I feel like this presentation today that Kirk put up is your opportunity to be proactive and get out in front of it. Just like he talked about with the 48ers, they were ahead of the curve. They made adjustments and changes ahead of time so that they were able to take advantage and gain more wealth in the years to follow. And so here's an opportunity for you as an agent to put an evaluation on how am I presenting my business to my core demographic and get out in front of it and not wait until you find out, oh, I guess everyone's all into this thing and into that thing. I guess maybe I'll make that change now. And at that point, you're too late. You're already behind it. And they've already talked to 5 other advisors that were already doing that. And they've already written their business there, right? So you're leaving money on the table if you're not getting out in front of these things and being proactive. I thought it was kind of what I got out of this.
Ricky, I'm just going to paraphrase here, but you're leaving gold on the banks of the river.
There you go.
Right? Be ahead of time. Pick it up, the gold, put it in your pocket.
100%. Yep.
Love that. I love the 48er reference, not necessarily the 49er reference, but yeah, absolutely.
I saw the helmet in the background. I knew you'd like that one.
Hey guys, again, I'll go ahead and flash this again on the screen. At producersengage.com is where you're going to find today's replay or today's event available for replay later today. Give us a couple hours. We'll make sure to load that up on there. But you can also find a link to connect with one of our success coaches via myself, Ricky, or Brett. Also a contact form if need be. You also have our YouTube channel as well. Make sure to follow us. We're on Instagram, we're on X, we're on Facebook. We're doing the things that we're putting into practice, the things that we're talking about today. Creating a bridge. This is all about making connections. And if you want to learn more about how we can help you do the same thing, again, reach out to our team. We're all about helping advisors and agents nationwide level up their practice to make sure they're addressing some of the issues we covered today. Kevin, I see Kevin's still here. Good to see you have here, brother. Thanks for opening up our call as well, and excited to introduce a lot of the agents and advisors on this call to Global Atlantic. But any last words you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
No, I mean, you guys are terrific partners. We really appreciate everything you do. We appreciate you having us here today. And if you want to learn more about us, give the Win Group a call.
Fantastic. Guys, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedules. Let's take action. Reach out to us, book a call, click on the website, drop us a follow, and we can't wait to connect with you here soon. Take care, guys. Cheers, and we'll see you in the next one.